Hey, what is up, you guys, and welcome back to the Aussie Grid Girl episode 2. Now, I had a very special guest for the filming of this episode, who you guys will meet very shortly. We had a lovely, about an hour and a half long chat this time, and we looked at all of the new liveries, made some predictions, and talked about how we think things are going to get shaken up next year. If you guys enjoy this episode, please leave a comment below and let me know what you did like about it or what you didn't like about it if you didn't enjoy it. If you didn't enjoy it, that's so fine too. I do hope you guys do like it though, because we had a really good time chatting. Lucy is now the second guest that I've had on the podcast, so I'm hoping this year to get some more guests and hopefully get you guys more involved with the podcast. Just remember, if you guys want to come hang out with me on Twitch, you can. My username over on Twitch is Kelsey_the Caffeine Queen. If you want to come hang out with me on Instagram and on TikTok, it is the Aussie Grid Girl. If you want to come hang out with me on Twitter, it is Kelsey_139. Now, if you would like to join the Aussie Grid Girl Fantasy F1 League, you are also more than welcome to do that. You just need to message me on one of those platforms, let me know how you found the podcast, or you can actually pop it in the comments below as well, and let me know if you want to be involved, and I'll hook you up with a link for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're not doing it for money or anything like that anymore. It's just going to be fun, and I would love to get involved with you guys. As always, if you have any questions or anything that you'd like us to talk about on the next podcast, pop it in the comments below, or you can message me on any of my social media platforms and send me questions, comments. If you're going to send me hate, please don't do that, because I won't read it anyway. Anyway, like I said, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I really enjoyed recording it. And yeah, I will see you guys next time. But for now, enjoy the episode. All right, guys. So as my intro video would have said, which I'm going to record after we do this, we have the lovely Lucy with us today. I'm doing this because she's over here on my screen for me. Hi, Lucy. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm so excited to do a podcast. I've never done a podcast before.
That's so exciting. So for those that don't know, which most of you do because I've recorded with him before, I am very active on Twitch. If you don't follow me on Twitch, I'll drop the link at the end. But I am very active in the Twitch community, and very specifically active in the Twitch community of Luke Crane. And Lucy is one of my fellow mods, and that is how we met and became friends. But Lucy, if you just want to do a little intro and talk about yourself.
Yeah, so I'll probably talk about myself in terms of racing. But yeah, so I've probably been into F1 like seriously for about like 3 or 4 years. I attended my first race in Azerbaijan last year, which was really awesome. And I'm actually attending Brazil this year, which probably could be even better. My earliest memories of F1 are probably like going over to my granddad's house and like watching it on a Sunday. But yeah, like I was never into it at the time. It wasn't the cool thing, and now I'm really into it. But yeah, that's probably enough.
And which drivers / team do you support? Because I'm very much a driver supporter, not a team supporter.
So I got into the sport because I like Max. Max is my driver. I support Max more than I support anybody else. I do like other drivers, but Max is the one that I consider myself a fan of. I like Red Bull as a team, but I'm more of a driver fan than I am a team fan.
You guys should see Lucy in our Discord. She's very defensive when it comes to Max. Just like my friend Aaron, who I've talked about before, is very protective over Charles and very much not a fan of Carlos.
I like to say that I'm not that much of a hater, but I can be if things go wrong.
I think it's very dependent on which driver we're talking about as to whether or not there is hate.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the plan. Sorry.
I'm indifferent to most.
So the plan for today, guys, is Lucy and I are going to look at the liveries / the cars from last year and this year, and we're going to kind of compare the cars, see what differences we can kind of pick up, and then we're going to talk about
testing a little bit and then some predictions for this year. And before we do get into that, you guys are going to be able to see my hands because I do talk with my hands, and you will see that I have a brace on my hand. Don't quite know what I've done to it yet. It's either nerve damage or carpal tunnel or rheumatoid arthritis. I don't know what it is yet. I have a doctor's appointment soon and an MRI, so we will work it out from there. But I'm okay. I didn't break anything. It just doesn't work, basically. So, all right. Well, let's get into it. We're going to do it alphabetical order, which means that the Alfa Romeo is up first, or we should say Sauber, I suppose, shouldn't we?
Yeah, let's just say Sauber.
Sauber. All right. So let me share my screen. Now, you guys are going to have to bear with me because this might take a turn. Let's hope it works the way it's supposed to. All right. So we have on the left-hand side of the screen, which is this side, last year's car. And then we have on this side of the screen, which is the right-hand side, we have, last year's car, this year's car. What is, aside from the color, what is the first thing we kind of notice? It looks fatter, no? Like more boxy?
I think it does look a bit fatter, yeah. The the floor also looks very different to me. Like on the old one, it's kind of crinkled. I don't know really how to explain it. It's kind of cheese gratery, the old floor. This floor kind of looks a bit more smooth.
Yeah, it's a bit of like a reverse ramp, I suppose. The front wing is also like, it looks really different. It's more like a square shape, like a triangular shape this year than it was last year. Like it's a weird, like more of a round shape on last year's car compared to this year's car, which hopefully that is going to be a good thing in terms of front wings. Rear wing, I've said this twice now, that the rear wings look so much different this year. And also kind of like fatter, like wider, I suppose.
Yeah, no, completely agree with that. Obviously, I don't know like how much wings will change over the course of this season, like track dependent. But yeah, one of the things that I was finding, especially with the Sauber, is I find it really hard to work out the bodywork on the green. I think it almost camos parts of the car. But I think it looks really, really cool.
Yeah, which could be tactical, to be honest. But I really like you can't really see it on the car, this little the arrows that they've put in on the wings that they were talking about, where you can take this cover off and change it depending on what airflow the drivers are going to need. And that's a direct offset of Qatar last year.
That's very cool.
And like the side pods are really weird on the car this year. I think they're quite like thin, but it's the same on the Red Bull as well, which we'll have a look at.
They're much more sloped, I think, compared to last year, which is kind of more I want to say Bath-like.
Yeah, the Ferrari especially, which we're going to have a look at as we go through the alphabet. It always looks really boxy, and I'm not a fan. Like, I do not like how boxy they look. So if I go, oh no, I hit the wrong button. Go back. We're not ready for you yet, AlphaTauri. So if we look at the side-on view as well. Ooh. Yeah, guys, I have all the angles. All the angles. Is that my Discord or yours? I think it's yours.
I'm not gonna lie, it's probably mine. Do you want me to mute it?
No, it's fine. And then it's all right. So if we look at the side-on view of the car, you can see kind of more what we mean when you talk about the wings, like the side pods rather, with the shape of them. And they're wider as well. And like we miss out on at least on the top of the car, you've still got like the cheese grater kind of thing, sort of. Whereas on you don't have it as much.
Yes, that's their cooling, right? That they've basically changed where the predominant part of their cooling is now.
Yeah, because instead of it being like at the tops, they've got the gaps now in the front, which they were pointing out the other day. And then you've also got like it's not on the Sauber, it's on the Red Bull, which we'll get to it, but they also have like cooling at the top here. And then you can kind of see like what we mean about the scoop of the front wing. Like it is much more of a scoop rather than like a rounded shape. But yeah, the rear wings are definitely quite weird. Like they're very, very boxy. But overall, what do we think of the livery as a whole?
I love the livery. I was really hoping that they would go green and black. I think we spoke about that. I was really hoping for green and black. And do you know what? You know what car it is when it's on the track, and that's
Yeah.
all I really want.
Especially with all of the carbon fiber. Carbon fiber. Have you seen that TikTok?
No, which one?
Fiber? Yeah, with all the carbon fiber, at least you can see like with the wings especially, like you can see it's very green, so you know that that's the Sauber coming at you.
Yeah.
But I'm a big fan of it. I really do like it. I think the green and black looks great. It's very sleek, it's very sexy. Overall, probably like a 9 out of 10.
I'm going 9.
9? 9's across
Yeah,
the board for the Sauber. Right,
yeah.
so alphabetically next we have the Alpha Tauri / the V Carb. Now talk about liveries being different. I think it's going to open on the same side. Oh, there we go. Look, I managed to get them side by side. Good job, me.
Nice.
Let's that bit. I love the livery so much.
I don't mind it. I don't think it's the best. I think it looks quite I don't know what the word is. I don't think it looks very modern. I like the colours of it, but I think it looks quite 2016-esque.
Yeah, well, it's very reminiscent of the old Toro Rosso livery when it was, I think it was Pierre and Danny Kvyat driving together. It's very reminiscent of that livery, but I do like that they've kind of gone away from the navy and it's more blue, but I do worry about mixing it up with the Williams because it's very similar shades of blue. Like the big white Hugo logo kind of helps with that. But I do think they look quite similar. And then looking at them side by side like that, you can definitely see that the rear wings especially, are very different.
Yeah, definitely.
And then this part I think is kind of thinner than it is on last year's car, maybe a little bit. And then obviously the air intake's slightly different as well. And the wings from the side, I think they're smaller on the sides this year, no?
Maybe a bit. I don't know. I can't tell whether it's a marginal difference or not. The thing that really stands out to me is the side pod being much more sloped.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see like it's very, very much like you could put like something up here and it would slide down. Whereas last year's car would kind of probably stop halfway before it kept going. Whereas it's definitely like a drop there. And I think they were saying the other day that the roll bars and the halos have changed slightly as well, like the shape of them, because of Joe's accident at Silverstone.
Yeah, that would make sense.
So that's the side-on view. And then if we look at it from the top, it's hard to see it this way when it's different like shots of the car. It was really hard to find photos, okay, guys? I struggled.
Yeah.
It's too early to be doing this in the season. There's not that many photos around. But it is very much, you can kind of see that the wing shape is different. Like they are quite square. Like the rear wings are very square this year compared to last year. And I think that air intake at the top looks thinner too than it was last year from this angle.
I think so. I like it from the top view. I think the livery is really cool from above.
From above, yeah. But I'm glad that it's got like the red roll bar and it's got the white stripes because that is going to help differentiate it from the Williams.
Well, one of the things that I found in 2023
Mhm.
was the wing on the AlphaTauri is what helped me differentiate it from the Haas because of the red Orlean. I don't know if that's how you say it, but the red Orlean wing.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of disappointed that the wing is now white
Mhm.
with the red text, because I kind of relied on that wing last year.
Well, at least you're not going to confuse it with the Haas this year because the Haas is
True.
like it's a different color, so that definitely helps. And then it's the air intakes on the sides again are different, but they are. I hate how boxy they look. Like they look less boxy this year than the Ferrari does because the Ferraris are they're a very weird shape, and I don't like the Ferraris at all. Like the shape of them, I don't like it. Right. And then we've got the Alpine. Although before we do, let's go back to the V carb for a second. Out of 10, what are you giving it, Lucy?
Or like an 8, I think. I like the livery. I kind of wish it had a red wing.
I'm a little bit biased because I was a big Toro Rosso supporter because I love Danny Kvyat. So I'm gonna say that it gets a 9 also from me. Not a 10, but it gets a 9 because I do really like the old school like Toro Rosso shout out.
It's a snapper color on the grid, isn't it?
It is, which is always nice considering we have like no color. See, I knew that was going to happen. You need to be on this side of the screen, Alpine. You're on the wrong side. Wow, I'm having deja vu. I think I said that last time when I was doing this on stream, where I
Maybe.
read things and then said that I was having deja vu.
So the Alpine,
The tractor, yeah.
yeah. I'm I'm just gonna start it off. Their livery is fucking terrible.
Oh, I know, it's horrible. And I'm so sad because, like, I don't know whether you follow them on Instagram, but they were very much teasing like a pink camo kind of deal.
Yeah.
And there is pink camo on like the tires, and there's a little bit on the front wings. There's a little bit of camo. You can see it when I do the top down view. But it was very like there's no color in it. Like, what's the
No.
point? And then when they did their livery reveal, they were like, oh, and here's the pink livery. It didn't look any different.
Same. Yeah. Like I do have one nice thing to say.
Mhm.
I know they didn't like these in testing, but I really like that the wheel caps on the front and the back are different colors.
Mhm.
I like the blue and the pink.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I
This is also,
I
I did type in 2023, but this is 2022 livery. You know how I can tell? Because it's got 14 on the back, which
oh
is
yeah,
Fernando's number. Oops.
I wasn't even looking at the number, but yeah, you're right.
Oops.
Yeah, yeah. Initial thoughts on livery.
Yeah, not.
They could have done so much with the colors that they
They
have.
could have. They could have, and they just didn't.
Yeah.
You want the Alpine 23? I think I got the 2023 car. Yeah, I did because it's got Esteban's number on it. I also couldn't find a good picture, so it's a bit blurry, so I apologize.
That's
Sorry
okay.
about this. Um, God, it's ugly to look at. I hate it.
I
Yes.
don't mind the wing at front. I like how it's black with the BWT in pink and blue. I think that looks all right. But yeah, the overall issue I think with the car in general is that it is a black car.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much a black car. There's that air intake that I was talking about.
That's super cool.
There's like the gap there, and they can change that nose as well, so they can either have the air intake or not have it. And then I don't like the side pods on it either. They look weird. Like,
No, they do look weird, don't they? And they're almost like a dramatic version of Ferraris last year, no?
yeah, it's a weird shape, like overall kind of shape. And the rear wing again, it does look bigger than last year's, but this front wing, like what is going on with the front wing? Like there's this bit on it this year, except it's more square.
Mm-hmm.
that really front. I don't see how aerodynamically that's going to be any use to them having it like flat like that.
I never understand aerodynamics anyway, so I'm just like, well, I we'll have to wait and see. But I think generally you know whether something's going to work by what everybody else is or isn't doing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. So my understanding of aerodynamics, especially in the context of the front wing, is that you want to punch a hole in the air with the car so it does kind of go over nicely to allow you to go faster, is my understanding of it in this context. And having that flat bit at the front really throws me because it's got to like the air has to go over, but then it's going to kind of stop and then have to go up a step to go over that like that bit because there is a literal like mini step there that it's got to go over, and it's quite weird. I might sound quite dumb to some people saying that, but it's my YouTube, it's my channel. I can say whatever I want.
I don't know. Like it could maybe it's pushing it down underneath the floor for downforce. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Don't know.
I
Right.
say that like any idea.
Hey, you sounded like you knew what you were talking about. So, all right. So yeah, it gets a 2 out of 10 for me. What about for you?
Maybe like a 4.
4. Okay. But yeah, I don't like it. And their pink livery was just not very pink. So I hope that kind of changes. Although on the second day of testing, they did change this nose bit. So it was all blue rather than black. And I do like that it is more blue. But overall, I don't like it. It's just not nice to look at. And you're going to use it with the Mercedes, and you're going to confuse it with now the Red Bull as well with the color change. So, all right, the Aston Martin. See, it's how I know it's last year's. It's got Fernando's number and not Seb's on it. So this is last year's car, and this is this year's car. And the only difference that I can see is the color. It is a slightly different shade of green this year.
Is it? I didn't even notice that when they first launched their livery. I was like, that is the same livery. I was like so sure that that was just I couldn't really tell. Like the wing, yeah, maybe that's different because they've got this one has a black wing.
Yeah. But it is very much the same shape. Like maybe like it doesn't look to me, it doesn't look any different. Like the side pods still look exactly the same. The aero still looks exactly the same. The rear wing looks exactly the same.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are they allowed, how can they have Boss as a sponsor?
I think it's because doesn't Lance have a thing with Boss? Because I know George does.
I don't know.
Well, no, George has a partnership with Tommy Hilfiger, which they announced just before the Lewis announcement.
Shocking.
So shocking. But I think it very much looks very much the same. Like if I put them side by side with the side views. Apparently I don't have the side view of last year's car. But it looks the same. Like I don't see any major differences aside from like the rear wing this year has Aramco rather than Cognizant on the top of it.
Do you know what? I liked the livery last year.
Yeah.
I'm not mad that they kept their livery from last year. I liked it.
I think it's very slightly a different color. Like I think it's very much slightly a different shade of green. Slightly.
Yeah, I can kind of see that.
Like it's more of a foresty green this year than like a mossy green, I suppose. Which is a very slight distinction, but my favorite color is green, so that's like the weird things that I pick up. And then it's also slightly different in color than the AMR 22 as well, which is definitely another different green, which is a green I look at almost every day when I look at my tattoo. It's very similar. I have an AMR 22 tattooed on my ribs, if you didn't know that already.
Seb one, yeah?
Yeah. And I got it before he announced he was retiring, so it's a bit more special.
Oh.
And then I think alphabetically next, we go from A to H. Unless we go
Wow.
to Ferrari, but it's down here as like SF, like Scuderia Ferrari.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess we should do the Ferrari next, eh?
Go on then, do the Ferrari.
All right, let's do the Ferrari. So there's last year's car. Right. Oh, look, I was even an equal opportunist, and I've got Charles' car from last year and Carlos's from this year.
So the first thing that I noticed between these two is last year's, the side pods look very flat, don't they?
Yep.
Like it's quite seamlessly like
Yep.
a lot. And this year they've pretty much gone the Red Bull route and gone
Yep.
completely.
Yep. And there's the air intakes too. You can see more clearly on the side view of the Ferrari. And then they've got the interchangeable nose.
Yeah, because their cooling used to be like on top of the side pod, didn't it? Like here.
Yeah.
And now it's moved a lot higher up.
Yeah. I do really enjoy the yellow and white stripes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agree.
I think it changes it up a little bit. And I do like that it's more red this year. Like the rear wing is more red than black. This part is also all red where it was black last year.
Yep.
There is still a lot of black on the car, but it is redder this year than it was last year, which I do appreciate. But again, livery wise, it looks like shape wise, it looks very similar aside from the side pods are the like main big difference. It's sort of hard to look at the wings here in this photo and see. Whereas if we look at a top view, and I can show you what I mean about the car looking very boxy. Like last year is very like I don't know, it just looks super boxy, whereas it still looks boxy here like this year as well, but less so. And I don't know if it's because of the color, like because of the black here rather than having it all red that it looks better. But just overall looking at it from the top, the shape looks so much better.
I think it looks less stumpy, and I don't know if that's because they've kind of moved the color into the rear wing as well. So obviously that looks like an extension, whereas on last year's car, that's very black.
Yeah, it's very flat.
So I don't know if that could be it.
But it does look like last year. I hated the top view of last year's car. Like it was so gross. Whereas this year I don't mind as much. But the wings look really different. Hey, no, we've done the steak car. We don't want that anymore. Like the front wings look really different.
Mm.
Like last year's front wings quite like it looks smaller this year than it was last year.
Yeah, I think you're right. It does a bit look. I also really like the flag at the front. That's cute.
Yeah, that does look really cool. There's just so many sponsors though to fit in on the nose of that car.
Yeah. One of the things that I really like with the Ferrari is obviously you mentioned the stripes.
Mhm.
I really like how they can pick those colors out in the driver flags.
Yeah.
And so the stripes are on like their suits, on the team kit. And I just think that's really seamless and really cool.
Mhm. I think this year for me it gets like probably an 8 out of 10 delivery.
I go with 8.
Like the spot, I know the sponsors are necessary, but it looks so ugly having them all on the nose. Like you've got all of this space on your side pods and stuff to put your sponsors. Like you've got all this car to put things on, and you want to put it all on the front. Although they did that last year too, to be fair.
And some of their sponsor logos aren't the easiest to put in, are they? Like I always think the Shell logos, like where'd you put that?
And there's so many of them too.
Yeah.
Got like the V power on the wing. You've still got on the wing this year, and then you've got the one on the top, and then you've got the ones on the sides. Like you've got the little one on the halo. So many. So I've got the SF 175, so I've got the 2022 car as an RC car, and there was so many shell logos that I had to stick onto it, and I'm just like, why is there so many of this fucking thing? Sorry,
pain.
Dad. I dropped an F-bomb. Sorry, Dad. Also, for those that haven't seen my Twitch channel, my dad watches my Twitch sometimes, and then he messages me on Facebook every time I swear and calls me out on it. So I try not to swear on Twitch and on the podcast, because he watches every single episode of the podcast on YouTube. Thanks, Dad.
Hi, Kelsey's dad.
I'm trying to get him on an episode, but he won't do it. So, all right,
Oh, that would be fun. That would be fun. You should do that.
let's move on to the Haas. So we've got last year's Haas, and then we've got this year's Haas. And I was going to say it doesn't look that different, but it does.
Yeah, I think there is parts that are very different. Again, side pod.
Side pod,
There's
yeah.
a lot in side pod.
It's quite chunky, the side pod.
Yeah. I think it's also a lot more rounded. Like their car, I don't know if it was just where the paint on their livery was last year, but they looked quite square.
Yep. Very much.
Whereas it's very round.
Yeah, very much so. I also got a 20 and a 27. See, equal opportunity. The shape of the rear wing is really obvious here as being different for me. Like, it's very, if I zoom in this photo, specifically on the rear wing, like, it looks more straight last year, whereas this year it's got more of like a dramatic curve to the bottom.
I think the wing's got more of a scoop to it, but obviously that could be dependent on track.
Yeah, and on the photo as well. But like, it does look like there's a bigger gap as well between, like, this bit looks longer on the wing between the two cars.
The sides of the wing look different as well.
Although it looks slightly longer, but again, it could be the paint.
Have they got more sponsors this year than last year?
Maybe. They're missing the American flag on it this year, though. We got the American flag there. No American flag here.
They got some red, white, and blue on the wing, I guess. Front one.
I think that's more of a sponsor thing than a flag thing, though.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at it from the top. Now they're on the wrong side. So this is this year, and this is last year. Like, again, they've got the flag there, no flag here. That wing does look different from the top view too.
I think that wing looks skinnier, the new wing.
Yeah, same as the Ferrari. It does look quite square though. Like, last year's was kind of like a rounded shape, the body, but this year it's quite square, which again, it could just be the paint. But it looks very, like, it does look square to me.
I think the paintwork on the new one looks quite spider-like. And it just looks quite sharp.
Again, we are going to mix the cars up, though, I feel, with the Alpines and the Haas, because they look there is a lot of carbon fiber going on. There's a lot of weight saving happening. A lot of weight saving. But overall, I do like the change. I do like that it's more black this year than it was white. Like, last year, I didn't like the all white look. It was very old fashioned, I think. So I do like the black more. And people keep complaining about, like, carbon fiber and people not putting colors on their cars anymore. But the Haas colors have always been like black, white, and red. Like, even when they were sponsored back in the day by Rich Energy, it was a black car with like gold branding on it. So it's not like they're veering too far from their actual team colors. Although, to be fair, their team polos are like a navy, like a dark navy rather than black. I know, because I have one that I bought.
I would say I don't mind black cars if black is the team color. Like, when the Mercedes was black, I really liked that black Mercedes. I thought it was awesome. yeah, it's the teams like Alpine where it's not really their primary color, and the car is overwhelmingly black that I think it starts to become an issue.
Yeah, but Mercedes is still like, they're the silver arrows though, so they should be more colored than black, to be fair. But they haven't really been silver arrows since like 2017, 2018, I want to say. It was definitely silver when Nico won his championship in 2016.
This is silver until 2020.
Maybe.
Was the 19 car
Google.
black? I can't remember the 19.
I don't remember. Because they were until 2009, they were Braun. Well, they were Honda till 2008, and then 2009 it was Braun. And then 2010 was when Mercedes bought them out. Because that's when Jensen left to go and drive for McLaren.
You know your Jensen law.
I do know my Jensen law. Well, because in 2010, I believe Jensen was teammates with Lewis at McLaren. I'm pretty sure. A lot of the 2010 to 2013 years is a blur for me because it was when Seb won all of his championships. And if you're Australian like me, which it's funny everybody knows now how much I love Sebastian, his car tattooed and all the other things, but I was never a fan of him back in the early days because of Mark Webber being Australian. And like every Australian, even if you don't like follow Formula One, you know Multi 21 and you understand what that means.
Deep rooted.
Ah, all right. H, what comes after H? M.
Oh, the McLaren.
McLaren. So the 60 is last year's. See, the livery, it's not fair to compare the liveries because this is the chrome livery that I fucking loved. Which you can tell this is when it was doing testing because it's got the aero paint on the front and on the side. Not completely chrome, but that's all right. But it's very papaya this year.
I don't hate it. I don't love it. I liked when there was a little bit of blue in there, I think.
Yeah, the McLaren Golf livery from Monaco is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
I like
overall, I think it's a good car. It's bright. You see it on track.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not going to confuse it with anything.
Yeah.
Quickly, out of 10 for the Haas for you. Did we do that already? I think we forgot that.
3.
A 3, really? See, it's like a 6 for me. Because I like the colours. The chrome livery kind of helps with this shape of the air intake at the top looking very rounded, whereas here it's kind of more dramatic, I feel.
Yeah, it's more sloped, isn't it?
And the front wing, it looks longer, I think. Rear wing from this angle anyway looks small.
Yeah. Hard to tell specifically with the front wing in these two comparisons, I think. But yeah, I think I would agree.
Yeah, well, let's see if I can get it better with the top view. Yeah, it's hard because it's different angles, but I can't rotate the photo, otherwise it's weird. But the wings do look, again, it looks, I don't know whether it's because of the black, it looks quite square, whereas it looks kind of more rounded this year.
Yeah, agreed. There's a lot of space under that wing, isn't there? I hadn't noticed that on the other ones. There's a lot of
the gaps here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is quite. Oh, interesting.
If it's angle or
I don't know. It's very interesting. Again, with the boxy car last year, like it looks very square. Whereas again, this year, like it's way more rounded.
Yeah.
I think this might have been towards the start of the year because it was definitely different by the end of the year. Like by the end of the year, the McLarens looked more like they do this year.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that probably makes sense because they have the flow vis on the wing. So
Yeah.
I imagine they were running that testing or one of the earlier sessions.
Yeah. But it does look really good. Like it's
Yeah.
very similar livery to last year. But I don't know, change, what is it? Don't fix it if it ain't broke.
Yeah.
But there you go. There's your blue one
Um,
from last year.
I think there's more angles to the livery this year, like, and especially in their race suits, which
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of. But yeah, the black looks more decisive in the livery, like they've incorporated it more as an actual color rather than it just being carbon fiber to weight save.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I don't hate the livery. I think it's quite nice.
I like it. It gets a 7 for me.
I'll go with 7. Yeah, I'm happy with 7.
Again, with all the sponsors on the bloody nose and on the front wing. I do kind of miss the blue though. You're right. It does look good with the blue.
Blue looks good. The blue broke up some of the color, I think.
Yeah. The black and orange is very much. And I think someone pointed out that Oscar and Lando and Valtteri and Joe are going to look like highlighters walking around in the paddock in their race suits.
We just needed the Alpine to do the pink version.
I know. That it would have been perfect.
Yeah.
All right. And then we're nearly there, guys. We're nearly at the end. We got the Mercedes, the Red Bull, and the Williams to go. Right. So Mercedes, there's one. And then there is 2. Yeah, make it look like they're crashing into each other again. George is going to drive over the top. Lewis is going to drive over the top of George.
Oh God. Could happen.
See, looking at them side by side, they look very similar.
Yeah.
Which,
Except we know that they've drastically changed their concept for this year.
but it looks so similar.
Mm.
That's
Mm.
weird. Like even the wing looks pretty much the same. Maybe
Yeah.
last year's front wing is a bit longer than this year's, but that could just be the angle of the photo, although it does look kind of straight.
I will say I thought they had incorporated more silver into their livery, or is that just from the above?
I think that's just from the top. Because I
Okay.
think most of the nose is silver, maybe. But looking at them that way, they look very similar.
Yeah.
Like the only thing that sort of looks different is the Solera sponsor is higher up on last year's car than it is on this year's. Like for me, it looks very much the same.
Yeah.
But we
Yeah.
know from testing that it looks more like a Red Bull than a Mercedes. And the Red Bull looks more like a Mercedes than a Red Bull. That's weird. Again, it's not the greatest picture of last year's car. You can see the silver on this year's when you look at it from the top. But it looks so similar. It's tripping me out.
The silver arrows on the back look a lot darker, a lot more prominent on the new one.
Yeah.
Um,
Greatest photo of last year's
and
car.
the side pods are so much more pronounced in this photo of it.
It's very flat.
I just think there's just so much more to it. Like there's a lot more car.
Yeah.
Obviously last year's was extremely skinny. Yeah.
Which they know didn't work. Like last year's car was a disaster. As Toto kept saying on the radio to Lewis and apologizing. Shit.
Yeah.
The front wing it is wider at the front this year than it was last year. Like it's quite flat here, whereas it's longer on this year's car, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think from a livery point of view, it gets like a 7 from me because it doesn't look horrible. And at least you're going to be able to tell that it's a Mercedes from the nose, like from having that silver.
Yeah, I would go like 6, I think. I really like the turquoise in it. I always like the turquoisey bits in it. Um, but yeah, yeah. The thing that gets me about the nose of the car is it being silver on top and black at the sides. It looks like they're running two different liveries and they've just mishmashed them together. And I don't know, it doesn't fit quite right for me.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't have done it like that, but then, that's fine.
I can't say I pay much attention to Mercedes because I'm not the biggest fan of Lewis. Which is not for the reasons people are going to accuse me of saying that I don't like him for. It's because I was a big Nico Rosberg fan. Because you can't not love Brittany.
You fell on the wrong side of that drama.
Mm-hmm. Ended up on the wrong end of that. So, but it doesn't look terrible this year. It looks way better than last year's. Like the all black was not a vibe.
Oh, see, I didn't mind the all black. I thought it looked quite angry and quite dangerous, but then they had a tractor, so there was no point in it being like angry and
Looking good. Yeah.
it looked sad.
Just looks angry. My favorite livery is always going to be the Williams, and I will tell you why when we get to it. So we've got the RB19 and then the RB20, and we all know how sad Max was to say goodbye to his car. But speaking of black paint jobs, Red Bull, what are you doing?
I don't think it's black.
It looks more black than it does navy.
I think it's a darker navy. I just don't think that that's black.
No, looks kind of black to me. But then again, so does that. So
I don't know. So the obvious comment is what Ted Kravitz referred to as the cooling cucumbers.
that made my night.
But I'll go with it. Yeah, that bit above the side pod.
Yeah, the cooling cucumbers.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it?
It is. It's just, and I know that Ted was also saying this, was that it looks like the Mercedes of last year, and they know that the Mercedes didn't work. And like in testing, to be fair, which we are going to talk about in more detail in a second, it has like the Red Bull has been very quick, so we know it's not like the Mercedes, but it's very similar, like shaped. I'll say that. But
I think there's more to the car than the concept that Mercedes tried.
yeah, well, that's because they've got Adrian Newey. Man's a genius.
Yeah, I do think though,
Yeah.
there is a slight issue with the cooling cucumber, let's say, covering the driver number at the back. So if you go back to the side on the first view of the new RB20,
Yeah.
like look at the one, it's so
Yeah, you can't. Yeah.
so I'm like I don't think it'll be too much of a problem. You probably use the nose number usually when
Or
looking at what.
use the top.
Yeah, to be honest, I use helmet. Like it is what it is, isn't it? It is probably not that important. But I would have kind of expected them to maybe move that number.
Yeah, but look at these rear wings for a second with the dip in the center. Didn't have that last year. It's very flat last year.
True.
Interesting.
True.
But if you look at it, if you compare the top view, it like that looks blue, whereas that doesn't.
Yeah.
Although if I go to the top of the RB20, like it looks blue in that light, but it did look like
It does look dark, doesn't it?
yeah.
I'll say it. I personally think it's the best livery on the grid. I think it looks wonderful.
Mm-hmm. You're only a little bit biased.
One looks really great.
Yeah, but it does. I do like the yellow on the nose. It does look really good. I think you're gonna be less likely to confuse the like last year, the Alpha Tauri and the Red Bull, very similar colors. Whereas this year you're not gonna have that issue because of the V carb being the Toro Rosso colors. Like the lighter blue, it's very easy to differentiate the two.
I think it's going to sound harsh. I don't think I ever had a problem because they were so far away from each other. Yeah, they're basically front and back of the grid.
True. True. There's something going on with this rear wing, but like it's got a dip in the center. Whereas you can see, like if I zoom in on last year's, it's quite flat across the top. Like it's got
Yeah.
maybe a little bit of a dip, but I don't know if it's different angles as well, but it looks like there is quite like there's a big dip in the center of the rear wing. But
It is interesting, but I do know that a lot of the like the Red Bull like power or whatever, let's say, is in the actual beam wing underneath. So I would like to compare the differences with them, but that would be very hard to get a photo of.
yeah. But the floor as well, like it's spiky on the sides. Again, it could
Mhm.
be the photo, but and the side pods are a lot more dramatic, I think.
That spiky floor is actually a design feature. It repelled George Russell.
From smashing into the side of you. But notice how it only happened in sprint races.
Yeah.
Like he took out Max in Baku and then took out Checo in, was it in Spa or was it in Hungary?
I don't know. Honestly, maybe I misremember, but didn't George take out a lot of people throughout the year?
It might have been in Hungary, I think.
Yeah, so it's feature
Mhm.
of the car.
Yeah, but it does look it does look really good. Like it gets
Yeah.
a 9 from me.
It looks quick.
It
I
does
don't
look.
know. It looks like it's gonna win
Yeah,
a few races.
yeah. Oh, look, there's the difference. There's a red stripe. No red stripe. Now, if you
See.
guys aren't on Twitch, you would have missed on the Team Redline stream Max saying that the livery looked exactly the same about 3 days before they launched it. And then I think it was the day before. I might have missed the stream because their streams run at about 4 a.m. for me. I might have missed the stream and he came on and he was saying that it was very different. It's like, who
Yeah, it's
told you off, Max?
drastically different.
Who
Yeah,
told
right.
you, who did you get in trouble from for saying that it looked exactly the same? Not that everybody didn't know already that it was going to look exactly the same. It's looked exactly the same for the last however long. Let's be honest.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think it looks good.
Yeah. Right, there we go. So last year, this year. I do like the darker blue. And my favorite thing about the Williams last year and this year is the air intake looking like a Duracell battery. It's my favorite feature. I love it.
So glad they kept it.
It's so good.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's a lot of carbon fiber, but I do love the Duracell. It just looks so good. And you can't use it with anything.
I love that they have more sponsors this year.
Yeah, me too.
That is a good sign. I'm a quiet Williams fan, I would say. I love an underdog and I really, really hope that they can build it back up.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're on the way.
I love Alex's album.
Mm-hmm.
Alex is just he's just funny and his Alex noises are my favorite thing. If you don't know what Alex noises are, go onto YouTube after this, not mid video. Go onto YouTube and look at the Williams challenge of Alex and Nikki building sandcastles on the beach in Abu Dhabi. And just like Alex running around trying to find shells on this fake beach and just the noises that he was making. It was so good. Just Alex noises.
I've not had them. I will. I'll go and listen after.
I'll show you. I'll put the Alex noises on for you. Right.
It's good. I like it.
So this is the reserve driver that Lucy and I were trying to figure out before we started recording. Who is number 45? I don't know who it is. It really bugs me. So, but the shape this year looks very different. Super boxy, not super boxy. Which again could be the paint job, but it's not super boxy. And I love that it's not super boxy. That front wing's different too. That's last year's. That's this year's. It's a different shape. Again,
Yeah.
it is a different shape. I do like it though. The Williams is a 10 out of 10 livery for me, purely because of the Duracell.
I own 9.
And the white race suits, they're a vibe.
I hate white race suits. Really, really. One of the things that I would say, and we could probably talk about this more when we talk about testing, is I'm really worried that Williams has lost their straight line speed.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think they're going to be like a back of the grid car. I think they're going to be, you know, in the lower midfield, let's say.
Lower midfield. All right.
Yeah.
So we have done all of the liveries and rated all of the cars. One thing that I will point out that we didn't talk about, which I'm going to try and see if I can point it out in these top view videos and pictures of the Mercedes, if I go back to it, is that they've moved the actual seat forward this year. Was it forward or backwards that they've moved it? Because Lewis was complaining about it last year.
I think they've moved it forwards.
Moved the position of where the driver is sitting. Which I think is, if it was making your drivers uncomfortable, it's definitely a good thing. And one thing that we know everyone's kind of done this year is they have fixed their porpoising issue straight from the out. Like no one was porpoising at testing.
Good.
Which is definitely what we want to see. But let's talk about testing. And for me, the surprise was how quick the McLarens are or were during testing. Like Lando pulled a couple of like P2s during testing that I was quite like, oh, okay. So it's nice to see that the momentum from last year is being carried over to this year.
I was a little concerned. Concerned is the wrong word. I was a little surprised they didn't do as many laps. They seem to be hindered on a couple of occasions with how many laps that they could actually do, like a couple of issues. But I suppose that is what testing is for.
Yeah.
So to get them all out of the way would be good. I was probably really pleasantly surprised with the RB, I will say.
Yeah.
Or the V carb, whatever you want to call it. That doesn't look like it's going to be fighting at the back of the grid, in my opinion.
Nope.
So, and I think that's great because I like both Danny and Yuki. So
I think it's a bit, you can't really gauge what the season is going to look like from day one of testing. But from day one of testing, like Daniel was P4 in one of the sessions, I think, which is very promising to look at. I think it was the Red Bull, the McLaren, the Ferrari, and then the V carb rate RB.
Yeah, I don't think we saw, I mean, we probably didn't see the full potential from anybody, but like obviously the Ferrari put on the C4 tires on the last day and did some glory runs that a couple of the others did as well. Red Bull didn't. So I think there's a lot of pace in hand. But I also think Mercedes are hiding their true performance as well. I think I don't think they're going to be like up there with Red Bull. I think they're going to be fighting McLaren, Aston, Ferrari again.
Yeah. I think it is very clear though, from what we have seen, that it is going to be Red Bull at the front of the grid again.
Yeah,
And surprisingly, it's not looking like the Williams is going to be at the back.
no, I don't think it will be either.
But it is, I feel bad for, because I love Nico and I love Kevin, but I feel so bad because the Haas still looks shit. Like,
Yeah. And it's probably not wonderful that we were told even at the car launch, this is going to be a back of the grid car.
yeah, especially at the start of the season, like they were very much like,
Yeah.
we need to do more development. We know that, which it just blows my mind that they've had all of this kind of time. Like, I know they're not allowed to work during a portion of winter break and summer break, but it's still very much like, what were you doing then? Like, what have you been doing the entire break aside from firing Gunther and hiring AO as your TP?
I I don't think anything's going to change because I think the problem lies in Gene Haas.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that they have the obviously there's a budget cap. I don't think they have the money to get to be doing the kind of performance upgrades that they need to bring. Um, yeah, I think it's a problem right at the top, and I think yeah, their new team principal has absolutely no chance.
Yeah. And it's like, I get, okay, cool, that AO comes from like an engineering background, so he has more of like an engineering insight into the team. But Gunther has been there since, Haas kind of were born. Like,
Yeah.
it's going to be very weird not having him on the grid and kind of not having him at Haas. I think they're going to struggle. Like, I
Mm.
think the reason why we got such good performance out of Kevin last year was because of that kind of relationship he had with Gunther. And he was very much like, especially like the year before last as well, when he came back to take the seat after the whole thing with Nikita Mazepin, and he came back and had this amazing performance at Abu Dhabi and not at Abu Dhabi, at Bahrain, and just, he was P6 in Bahrain in quali, and then the car just went to shit.
He got pole,
Yeah.
obviously in a dramatic circumstance,
Yeah.
but yeah, like there were definitely high points for them, and yeah, I feel like it's just looking a bit bleak, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Like, there's a very clear like front running team, and there's a very clear like back marker team in Haas, which it pains me to say that I've been a Nico Hulkenberg fan for a very long time, it's long suffering being a Nico Hulkenberg
Painful.
fan. It's very painful. But yeah, I think that there is very clear front marker, back marker, but that the midfield is going to be very close.
Yeah, I mean, I was saying just before we brought this started the podcast, I don't think that there'll be a midfield this year. I think that we will have Red Bull at the front. I think we'll have Haas at the back. And then I think the rest will be very, very tight. And then, yeah, there might be like an upper and a lower section, but I think it will be much more tight than in the past few years.
Mm-hmm. And I think, looking to the season, kind of making some, not well, we're going to call them predictions, but some like things that I'm going to say about the season this year is it's going to be very interesting at Ferrari, seeing what kind of, and I know that Fred Vasseur's come out and said, Carlos, the fact that Lewis is coming in is not going to change anything, and Carlos is very much like, I'm not going to not perform because I know I'm leaving. But I think that team dynamic is going to change dramatically this year, and I'm interested to kind of see how it plays out. I think silly season is going to be ridiculous because there is a majority of the grid that are out of contract at the end of this year. I think people have already said it. I kind of disagree. I think they'll give him at least a season. Is that people keep saying that Daniel's probably going to be in the Red Bull halfway through the season, which I don't don't think regardless of how well he performs, I don't think they're going to do that.
No, I disagree as well.
I think Checo kind of does have till the end of the year to prove himself. And I also think that there are other teams with seats that are going to be interested in Daniel. And I know he's worked, he's said that ultimately he wants to be back in the Red Bull car. But with Lewis leaving, there's that seat at Mercedes. And I think if Red Bull were to turn around and go, sorry, no, we're keeping Checo in the car next year, or we're going to bring Liam Lawson up, if that Mercedes seat becomes available, I feel like Daniel would take it if it was offered to him.
I don't really know how I feel about all of that. So I think Checo will be in the Red Bull for the whole year. Even if he performs quite badly, I think he'll be in for the whole year. The only scenario in which I see them removing him early is if that car isn't as competitive as we believe right now, and the championship, the Constructors' Championship, is on the line.
Yeah.
They could remove him in that scenario, but I don't see that being very likely. So I think he has till the end of the year. I don't think they'll renew him for 25. Unless he pulls a lot out of the bag. And I think even if he does pull a lot out of the bag, he's shown that he can be quite inconsistent. So I don't really know. In terms of who could move into the second Red Bull seat, obviously there's the V-carb guys. My heart would like it to be Daniel. I like Daniel. But again, I'm not really sure. Probably very dependent on how he is this year. I don't think it will be Yuki. I think Yuki is in a very similar situation that Pierre was in, and I think he's trying to get out of the Red Bull family, maybe.
I don't think they'll re-sign Yuki for next year.
Yeah, I think
Yuki's heavily backed by Honda, and with Honda pulling out of Red Bull, I think they'll take Yuki with them.
Yeah, and Liam obviously performed so well in the races which he took over that he really could and maybe should be in one of those RB seats. But I think Red Bull probably needs to have a good look at Alex.
Well, I think Alex will probably end up at Mercedes, to be honest.
And maybe that would be the better move. I don't know.
It depends. It really depends on whether or not Mercedes are going to seriously look at Kimi Antonelli as well. Like if they're only going to give him the fact that he's gone straight from, he's skipped F3 and gone straight to F2 from Freaka. Like I think if anything, it's going to be a year-long contract at Mercedes, and then they'll give it to Kimi Antonelli, not next year, the year after. Although, they could possibly bring him up next year if he does perform in F2. But I think if you do that, you introduce the Logan Sargent conundrum, which regardless of how good a driver is in F2, and like Logan wasn't terrible in F2, but it happened with him, and it happened with Mick Schumacher, and it happened with Mick and with Logan, is that they got to that F1 seat and then just didn't perform.
Yeah.
But Kimi Antonelli sort of comes from the same, like I would say he's cut from the same cloth that Max is.
I agree.
In terms of being competitive and just being really, really naturally talented as a driver. So I don't think we would have a Mick or Logan situation on our hands. But I feel like if they do push him too early, that it will be detrimental to him. Because he's not even 18 yet. He's just a kid.
Yeah. I think we need to talk about where Carlos would go.
I don't know.
Because I mean, obviously people connect him to Audi, but that's not until 26. So are we expecting he has a seat in 25? I would hope so.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think we can rule him out of the Red Bull seat, to be perfectly honest. He was a Toro Rosso driver. like he started off in that Red Bull family. He was Max's teammate for ages, and people forget that.
Yeah. But they were it's like, obviously, I don't really know much about it. I wasn't religiously watching sport in 2015.
Yeah.
Not going to try and pretend I was. But like, from what I've heard, like, it was quite a toxic, like, maybe not between the drivers, but between the families. And I don't know, maybe that wouldn't really be a situation anymore. I get the impression they work quite well together.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just don't know whether I see it. Maybe that would be a good choice. I'm not sure.
Just, I don't know. Personally, I would like to see, and as much as I love Pierre and Esteban, I think Esteban has had a couple of really disappointing seasons, and I don't kind of see him improving. And both he and Pierre are out of contract at the end of this year. I think Pierre will land somewhere. Esteban, I'm not too sure on. But
I'm really glad that I'm an Esteban hater.
Right.
I'm just kidding. I don't like him. I think he's really mid, and I think he creates an awful vibe at every team he's in. I don't think he works well in a team, and I think he's a risk for anybody to sign because I don't think he'll be a team player, and that's incredibly important in the midfield teams that he could potentially get a seat at.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm kind of with you. I think he could land with nowhere.
Somewhere, yeah. I think there's also the potential where there is a bunch of F2 drivers without seats this year that kind of should have them.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to see Alpine kind of take a gamble next year and get rid of both their drivers. I don't know. Like, I kind of don't know where people would end up. Like, maybe Pierre could end up at Mercedes. It's a radical switch. Or he might end up at Sauber, because I think both Valtteri and Shaw are out of contract as well. And if Shaw underperforms again this year like he did last year, then what's the point in keeping him? Like, he was very much going to lose his seat this year. I don't quite know what happened there. I think there was a lot of politics behind the scenes that involved him not losing his seat, whereas like I personally think he should have. But I think Alpine next year would be really good if they took a gamble and they put Jack Doohan and Teo Porcher in their cars and had like two rookies on the team, which I think would work quite well for them, especially when Jack is doing all of the developmental like driver stuff and reserve driver for Alpine this year.
I guess I don't know loads about the Alpine like junior program. Obviously the one rookie, say, or one junior that I think really should and deserves a seat is Liam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, Jack was in F2 last year, and he didn't underperform. Like, he wasn't terrible, but he also, like, the car that he was in last year in F2 was also not fantastic. But he is doing he's officially reserve driver for Alpine now, especially that he doesn't have F2 duties this year because he's left F2. And Teo Porcher is the F2 champ from last year, who is without a seat this year. And then you've also got Fred Vesti, who was P2 in the championship in Formula 2, who's also without a seat this year. There was a bunch of F2 drivers that lost their seats this year. With contracts not being renewed, like Arthur Leclerc is one of them as well. He's officially reserve driver for Ferrari now with Ollie Behrman. I think they both are reserve drivers.
You're doing something in GTs, if I made that up.
I think that was the rumor, but I don't think he is, because there was a rumor that he was possibly doing WEC as well, which that didn't end up happening either.
Okay.
But he's still he's not part of the Ferrari Academy anymore, but he's still part of the Ferrari family. And I know he was doing like testing over the summer because Charles was posting about it on Instagram, and it was quite cute. Because Lorenzo was there as well, and it was like the three Leclerc boys together at Ferrari, which was quite sweet.
That is quite sweet.
And then you've also got Ollie Behrman doing 6 FP1 sessions this year, It's so weird. When I saw that he was doing 6, I was like, why is he doing so many? So I
That's so nice.
very much think they're gonna drop either Kevin or Nico at the end of the year, depending on who performs worse this year. And I very much think they're gearing up to put Ollie in the house next year full time.
I would kind of be surprised at that because of their history with rookies. But
Mhm.
I don't necessarily think it's a bad choice, and I don't think you can discount all rookies on um how they perform
Yeah,
that
but
way.
Ollie Behrman is. People are gonna hate me for this. Ollie is better by a mile, a long mile, than Mick ever was.
I don't disagree with you. I do know that.
So,
Um, yeah. What are your predictions? What do you think's gonna?
oh, okay. Predictions slash wants.
Okay, we'll go there.
I want and I predict very many Charles Lando Max podiums.
Okay.
And I very much think, as much as I want Lando's going to win a race this year, is my prediction. He will win one. I don't know which one he will win, but he will.
Okay.
He will win a race. But I think I think Max is still going to dominate for the
Mm.
entire year until the regulations change, until the cars change. Um, he's unbeatable. Like, he's just that good.
So I I I think Max will get his fourth.
Mhm.
Um, I actually think Oscar will get closer to a win than Lando. I don't know if they will get a win. I hope, let's say I hope they do. But I think it'll be Oscar. I don't think it'll be Lando.
Oof, you cut me deep, Lucy.
I don't, and there's no particular reason why. I just think like Lando is quite unlucky. Um, it would be just his luck that his teammate gets the win first. Like,
Well, I mean, Oscar won a sprint race last year.
yeah, um, yeah. So it would be just his luck. So I think that I think it's probably quite an obvious choice, but I think the dynamic at Ferrari and Mercedes, there will be a 1-2 driver because both uh, Lewis and Carlos are leaving. So I think the dynamic at those two will be quite clear cut.
But do you think that that dynamic will continue at Ferrari once Lewis is at the team? Because I don't.
No, not at all. Um, I I genuinely don't really know what the dynamic at Ferrari will be once Lewis is at the team. I think that there'll probably be pressure from quite high up, like John Eltman kind of level, that Lewis is the 7-time world champ. He is that they're paying a massive amount of money to have him. So I imagine that
Yeah. But he's a
I imagine
7-time world
Charles-
champ without a win in 2 years.
yeah.
Whereas Charles has many and would have many more if Ferrari knew how to strategize properly and didn't keep screwing him over.
But but Charles didn't get a win last year either, and his teammate did.
Yeah, but they sacrificed Charles to give the win to Carlos. But they didn't give the win to Carlos, but the fact that they kind of fed Charles to the wolves
I
with
don't think
their wanting for a 3-second gap.
I don't think that that the Charles and Lewis thing, I think they've performed similarly with the cars that they had in the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like the Merc got one win in Brazil with George. The Ferrari obviously got more wins, especially in 22. But yeah, I don't think Charles has performed like way better than Lewis in the last few years. I think they've probably done the most, but they've probably both done the most that they can with the package that they had.
Yeah.
Um,
But there's
and so
also
yeah,
like a lot of strategy related things though that kind of killed Charles. Especially like don't talk to me about Monaco 2022. Just don't.
So one of the things that like kind of frustrates me about Lewis is he obviously they all rely very heavily on their team, right? But Lewis will speak to the team, but then after the decision will be like, no, you've got it wrong, like blah blah. And I've always thought maybe until this 23 season that Mercedes' strategy was generally quite on point. They were usually quite good at it, right?
Yeah.
So I'm a bit like, well, is Lewis going to flounder in Ferrari? Because I don't think that I don't think he's used to having to direct the team as much.
Mm-hmm.
But then I don't know, does Charles do that? Like Carlos is much more the one that is outwardly telling the team last season. So I don't know what the dynamic at Ferrari will be like in 25. I think it'll be really interesting to watch.
Yeah. I think it also depends on whether or not Bono comes over from Mercedes to Ferrari with Lewis, or if he's going to have to deal with the Ferrari, whoever they decide to have as his race engineer, if it's the same guy that Carlos has, or if he's
Maybe.
Bono with him. Like, I think if it's the same guy as Carlos has, then it's going to be a struggle. Whereas if he's allowed to bring Bono with him, I think Bono will also bring a dynamic to that team where he knows his shit and he knows what he's talking about, and they're going to have to listen to him, and different strategy calls will be made based upon that.
Do you think he will bring Bono?
I don't know. It depends on if he's going to be allowed to or not, is the thing.
Yeah. It reminds me of an interview that Max gave where somebody specifically said to him, if you were to change teams, would you take GP? And he said, well, I don't think he really knew how to answer it, because if he said yes, he was like, well, they're gonna lock GP down.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. It is really interesting. I think some driver engineer pairings
Yeah.
are very tight knit and wouldn't want to be split in these situations, and some are not fast.
Yeah. Like GP and Max for sure.
Yeah.
Lando and Will. Although I think it's Jarv now rather than Will.
They
But
swap.
I think they did last year. They were switching between the two of them. But I think Will has been Lando's engineer for a really long time. Like, I think he came with Lando from F2, I think.
Oh, interesting.
I think.
Yeah. So prediction, Max fourth WDC.
Mm-hmm. I think the constructors will be tight.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'll be. I don't know. I think Red Bull will probably win the constructors as well. If Max wins the drivers' championship, then they'll probably win the constructors. But I think the race for P2 in the constructors will be a lot closer than it was last year. And it was super close last year, like between Ferrari and Mercedes, especially towards the end of the season. But I think it'll be quite close between kind of McLaren, Mercedes, Ferrari, and Aston Martin. I think it'll be quite tight for that too in the Constructors' Championship.
Yeah, maybe. Do you think most of that might come from Checo?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. I do have to just say, while I have it in my head, Monaco.
Mm-hmm.
If Max wins Monaco this year, I need him to jump in the pool.
They didn't have it last year.
They didn't have it last year, and he didn't do it the year before that.
It's because nothing's ever going to be as iconic as
He didn't do it in 21.
Nope.
Didn't do it in 23.
Didn't have it in 23. It was a ball pit rather than a pool in 23, I think.
Could have jumped in a ball pit.
Yeah, but come on, from what we know about Max, do you think he would really do that?
Probably not. But this is my concern. I'm like, is he ever gonna jump in the fucking pool? Sorry, Kelsey's dad.
Sorry, Dad. Yeah, I don't know. I think 22 Checo was quite consistent. And then last year, towards the end of 22, and last year he just wasn't.
Mm.
And I think, I don't know, as much as Christian was saying, and I know that's kind of a dirty word right now, was saying that they're not going to drop him for this year, or they're not going to drop him halfway through. I think it was more because contractually and monetarily they couldn't, because of all the stuff with Nick and Daniel. Because even as reserve driver, we know that Daniel would have been on quite a lot of money. So I think they couldn't afford to do it.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of like Mexican sponsorship as well. I think that's probably quite
Yeah.
a big factor.
Yeah.
But then again, I don't think that they needed to, because Max carried the team so much. I think if the car had been less dominant and they were fighting properly for that constructors championship, then it may have forced their hand.
Yeah.
But they didn't need to.
No. Well, Max could have won the constructors on his own last year. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it'll be interesting because of all the dynamics that we know are changing next year with Carlos and Lewis, and with so many of the drivers being out of contract. Because
it's so many F2 people looking to break into the sport as well.
Yeah, because it's both of the Haas drivers are out of contract at the end of the year. Both of the Alpine boys are out of contract at the end of the year. Both of the Sauber boys are out of contract at the end of the year. Checo's out of contract at the end of the year. Daniel and Yuki are both, like, their contracts technically end at the end of this year as well. I think pressure is going to be on Yuki to perform this year against Daniel, because if he doesn't, he's not having that seat next year regardless of the Honda thing.
Liam's waiting.
Like, Liam's pretty much guaranteed. Liam is pretty much guaranteed a seat somewhere within the Red Bull family next year.
I don't think that's straight in the top team.
I think he kind of proved that he's good enough for it. But I think as well, you have the Pierre problem and the Alex problem if you put him in that car straight away.
Yeah. I think if Max wasn't driving for Red Bull and Liam had done what he's done, yeah, maybe he would be a candidate. But I think it's really harsh to put somebody so inexperienced alongside Max when they are going to have to basically eat shit every week with in terms of the gap between them. And I think you need to be a certain level of experience to go in there and not let that really mentally affect you.
I agree 100%. And that was kind of the thing with Pierre, was they pushed him too quick through, and it wasn't that he performed spectacularly badly. It was just, it's always going to be so hard to compete with Max because he is that good. And the thing for me with Daniel going back to the Red Bull family is that you can tell just from looking at his social media specifically, and just him at races, that he was so much happier last year than he was when he was at McLaren ever.
And that's even breaking his hand, he looked happier.
And I think McLaren has been built specifically around Lando, because Zach has such a big investment in Lando, and now in Oscar, but that McLaren team was very much built around Lando in the way that Red Bull is kind of built around Max, the way that Mercedes has been built around Lewis for however long. But I think that's going to be, it'll be quite weird to kind of see like Daniel go back to Red Bull, because the reason he left Red Bull in the first place was because he didn't want to be number 2 driver to Max.
He's made peace with it.
And then he's going to go back and be number 2 driver to Max. But I think for him, being number 2 driver to Max is better than being treated badly anywhere else.
Yeah, and also it is a potential step on the podium, isn't it? It might not be the one he wants. It could be the one he wants,
Yeah.
obviously, but it's the top end of the grid, and I think he's obviously missed driving at the right end of the grid. Yeah, and I think he has made peace with the fact that, he would rather be second to Max than 18th.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other bold predictions before we wrap up?
I think we might have a retirement.
Ooh, who?
So I think it's going to be Val.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, no. I don't want that.
Yeah, I think obviously he's had a good time at Sauber in the
Yeah.
last few years, but I think he's not getting not getting what he wants from sport anymore. I don't know.
Yeah. I'd love to see
He's in
Valtteri
a silly
like
situation.
I'd love to see Valtteri in like his villain era and go back to Mercedes. I give
Whoa. I mean, I don't think he would retire if that was an option, but yeah, I don't know. I think he might leave at the end of the year, and I think it might be because he has found other passions, and I would be totally supportive of that.
Yeah. I think we might lose Lance at the end of the year, to be honest.
We should lose Lance at the end of the year.
There's a should and thinking that we probably will because I don't he just doesn't seem to be enjoying it. Like at least year before last, you could kind of see like in 22, you could sort of see that he was enjoying himself. Whereas last year he just didn't seem like he was loving it. And I feel like the only reason he's still there is because his dad is making him. But there is very strong rumors flying around that Lawrence is going to sell it anyway. So,
Mm.
and if he sells the team and has no financial stake in it, there is no reason for Lance to stay because performance-wise, he's on the same kind of level as Esteban for me, performance-wise.
Yeah, it's kind of that. It's going to sound so harsh, and I really don't mean it to sound as harsh as it's going to. It's just irrelevant. Like he doesn't really register on my radar. I don't think a rookie would perform any worse. It's yeah,
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah. Lance just annoys me as well at the moment. Like, have you watched Drive to Survive yet?
I have watched most of it. I have not yet seen episodes 7, 8, and 10.
Okay. 7, 8, and 10, but you've seen 9.
I have seen 9.
Weirdo. But him saying, like, oh, it really pissed me off. Him saying that he overcame adversity after breaking his wrists to come back. And it's like, what do you know about overcoming adversity, you spoiled little rich boy?
You know, the first episode when Lawrence is like just spoilers, by the way.
Being Lawrence. Lawrence is being Lawrence.
Lawrence is walking onto the boat,
Oh,
and all of the staff are like 3 minutes until Lawrence arrives. Dry the sofas. Like, oh shit, he's coming. Like what? But yeah, I could see him not being there too. That's fine.
yeah. Sorry, I know I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for that comment that I just made about Lance, and that's fine. I don't care. You can come after me for not liking him. It just, as someone who has struggled for most of their life, I know what overcoming adversity means, and I really don't think he does.
Yeah.
So,
Overcoming broken bones. Yeah, sure.
yeah, like good on you. Good on you for the fact that daddy could pay to send you to a surgeon in Barcelona to fix it for you.
To be honest, it's probably a good job. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's the same surgeon that fixed Daniel. So from what I understand. So it's a
So you can practice with Lanson anyway.
yeah. We should probably wrap this up before people come for me and before I say anything like super offensive. So thank you so much for coming on and talking with me for about an hour and a half now. I'm sorry, Trent. I know you've got a lot to edit. I apologize. But it's always nice doing this with somebody rather than sitting and talking to a camera by myself. So thank you so much for doing this with me.
I have thoroughly enjoyed my first podcast.
Hopefully we can get you back on during the season to do some more guest spots.
Yes, I'd love to review how our predictions are going.
That's kind of the aim this year, is to have some special guests and to get some more people come and chat with me. I know Aaron wants to come chat with me. I'm going to try and get Crane back on again. I'm going to try and get someone from Redline. I would love to have like Bennett or something, or Gianni. That would be so much fun, but we'll see. But yeah, you guys can follow. You don't really use your Twitter, do you?
Nope. You can talk to me on Twitch.
Yeah, you can come hang out in my Twitch channel or on Crane's Twitch channel and interact with Lucy. But again, thank you so much. This was so much fun. We're going to do this again soon. I hope you guys had a good time as well. My Twitch, all the links will be in like the comments, but basically come hang out with me on Instagram and all of the things. My Instagram and my TikTok is the Aussie Grid Girl, or one word. My Twitch is Kelsey_the Caffeine Queen, because it just sticks and I'm not changing it now because I'm lazy. And my Twitter is Kelsey_139 if you want to come shout at me there. The league is still open to join if you want to come join the fantasy league. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're not doing it as a paid thing anymore because I felt bad asking my friends to pay me to play a fantasy game with me. But it's still going to be really, really fun. I am so excited for the first race of the season next week, which I'm going to probably miss watching it live because it's my best friend's hen's bachelorette. If you're not European or English or Australian, it's her hen party next week. So I'm going to have to wait till everybody goes to bed on Saturday night, really, really drunk, before I can put the race on the TV. So thank you guys so much. And I will see you next time. All of the love, and we will talk soon. Bye.